we'll hear if it isn't. But a very warm welcome to the Newcomers tournament in, what are we, February 2018 in Offworld Trading Company. This is Group D and the first game of 4 group games before the 5th final game. In this game we have Varanas, Never Zero, Racket and Bilbo Baggins, or Bilbo B. Baggins. He's going to be Bilbo from now on. Alongside me for this one, in a metaphorical sense at least, is Black Magic.
Hey there. Well, look at this map. We have over here, we have New Amsterdam, so that is a European colony, which means it's going to be consuming 1 chemical. Oh, we have our first found here.
Yep, fairly early, 14,000 on the Nomad. It seems like it's okay. Got the silicon there, got the aluminum in the south as well. We got a scavenger in the west too. Now this is an interesting scavenger in the sense that it doesn't have any carbon nearby, so that's going to be a long way to ship that carbon for Bilbo. Never Zero's dropped a robot in the south. It's a power robot by the looks of it. That is interesting, with power at $20. I'm not sure that's going to be profitable immediately. And the other found is another Nomad, and it's Racket in the northwest and also in the crater in the middle of the map. And some interesting founds. I think the only one that is going to be a fast start for me is Varanas.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That one's a good found just because you're near the silicon. I would have liked that one's not bad because you have your water right next to the silicon, so you can get a triangle of silicon, and that should be enough for you. I would like to point out, for some people that have resources really, really far away, there are core samples on the map. Now, there are also nukes, but the core sample could really help to get a triangle near your base or something like that. But having nukes on the market is kind of a concern for me for Racket, for instance. Just because Racket is shipping in the silicon, and then the other base is if you can help it, you typically want to try not to found into a crater because you want to keep all of your as many claims as possible right next to your base so you can rotate them. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and Racket is going to have trouble, I think, even with the early upgrade, because doesn't have any. Obviously, you don't start with resources as Nomad. That's one of the real disadvantages of playing Nomad straight away. You don't get anything at all when you found, unless you crush some resources, and Racket's got to get all of that silicon, all of that aluminum, but also, crucially, all of the electronics that he will need to upgrade. He's a long way away right now.
So let's start. So since this is a Newcomers tournament, just a general thing to point out. Varanas has a pretty good base setup, just because there are a lot of claims right next to their base. They're trying to use if they can do it in pairs of 2, or if they can do triangles. That's the best thing you can do. You want to try not to ship things across the map because you're going to be consuming fuel, or you're going to be consuming power if you're a robot. And so looking around at some of the bases, I don't necessarily have a particular issue with Bilbo's found, because one of the things you could actually do is they found it on dry ice. So you could, if you wanted, make it a dry ice scavenger, which is a little bit more challenging, but
yeah, it's a very difficult
maybe
thing
not
to
the
do.
First choice.
And we have a dust storm as well, which makes that a lot more difficult than it would otherwise be. Bilbo Baggins as well has a single glass kiln, which is not a great building right now, to say the very least, because we had a very unfortunate glass surplus, which means that is extremely unprofitable, even with him bringing all of that silicon in. So Bilbo Baggins at the moment struggling just a little bit.
And one of the things that I could say, let's take a look at now. Bilbo is on HQ3, which is actually pretty impressive. But there is a lot of shipping in this case. Was there I've noticed that nobody has purchased anything from the black market. Typically, especially by HQ3, somebody would have used something from the black market to either better yourself or to bring down another opponent, such as Varanas, which is cruising along. and
Yep.
now going into a geothermal.
Yep, Varanasi very, very far ahead in this game, to be completely honest. Has those 3 electrolysis reactors. They are doing work. Has got the water to support them, although he's not bringing any in right now, but he's in a field of water, so he can transition whenever he likes into some very good water. He's HQ4 with not a huge amount of debt, has that geotherm up, as you said, and is going to be paying off some of that debt very soon indeed. Neverzero does get to 3, and we haven't spoken too much about Neverzero's base. He's bringing in water from a long way away. That is a very, very high shipping cost, 0.68 per second in terms of power, so that's $120 per second now for Neverzero, and it's going straight into his debt, so that's going to be a little bit difficult for him. He's got those 2 steel mills, got medium iron, which isn't enough iron to support those 2 steel mills, but does have that electrolysis reactor that's being boosted out by the solar panel.
And one thing that people should know in terms of robots, every time we talk about trying to do pairs and things like that, robots are a little bit different, where you can get adjacency from power, from other buildings and things like that. So Neverzero's configuration is okay, but I would prefer a lot more. I mean, the far water, I think that's way too far to ship, and what I would have rather tried to do is maybe pick up a core sample and see if you could bring something closer, or maybe just try to found somewhere, somewhere different. I think the found is a little difficult just because of all of that shipping that you have to do, and you can see power's at 192, and Varanasi is going to be taking advantage of this high power price. And honestly, I would think about swapping out some of those something else to try to go really heavily into power, and that might actually, he's going into a greenhouse farm on the other side, but I might try to go really heavily into power and just take advantage of that, because there's not enough power at all on this map at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's right. And those reactors in the north, they were doing work for him. They're now not doing work. They're losing him a lot of money, but I'm sure he's going to be subbing those out very soon indeed. There was an auction for a patent lab which went for 18,000, which is a very cheap patent lab. It went to Racket, who isn't in too much of a position to use it, unfortunately, but that's maybe something that they can get in the future. Varanasi has gone into a patent lab of his own, and I wonder what he is going to be thinking about. There's a few, I don't really know, actually.
Should be going for superconductor, honestly.
Superconductor would be good. Yeah, that would be good.
Based on the fact that there's a geothermal connected to his base and power's at 178, you can pay that down really quickly, and that's honestly the first thing that I would be going for.
Maybe even the superconductor geothermal borehole wombo combo, which will give him a lot of power in the long term. He can build all the way around that geotherm whenever he likes.
The only negative about going for both of them is you might end up crashing your own power price by doing that. I might, let's see. He's not really, the great thing about his positioning is he is not shipping anything right now. He is auto-selling food, which I don't necessarily think is the right thing to do. Well, Bilbo's got two farms. No, you know what? There's not enough food production on this map. I don't think I'd be auto-selling food.
EMP comes down from Neverzero onto the food, but it wasn't really onto the food. It was, I think it sort of intentionally missed everything, as it were. Maybe even to see if the patent lab was protected with a goon squad, and of course it is. But Racket now knows that, but might have done better there just to get rid of that greenhouse farm triangle for a little bit longer and put the EMP directly onto that.
Now, I will note that Varanasi is going after geothermal borehole, which could be decent as long as this power price holds up.
He already has superconductor.
Already has superconductor, and this dust storm, I think, is gonna. Well, let's see. That's gonna help his dominance in food right there.
Yep, and power as well. There's a lot of solar panels.
Geothermal borehole is going to kill this power, though, especially because Neverzero has put up 3 solar panels, which are going to be affected by the dust storm, but I think power's just going to die way before that.
Yeah, I think it probably is too. There's a lot of power production going to come just from these 2 solar condensers now as soon as geothermal borehole comes in. Varanus got thinking machines for $6,000. That is too cheap for thinking machines, I'm afraid.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and some of the just taking a look at the launches right now, you could launch food for 30K.
Oof.
And the typically how much is the Offworld for 82K?
Varanus is going into Bilbo here and might be able to get the kill eventually. Bilbo's got a long way to go to defend himself. He upgraded slightly early to HQ5 without really being able to defend himself. And Varanus, I think, in fact, he sold his own stock now, so I think we're going to see the first casualty of Group D here as Bilbo goes down to Varanus.
And I would like to note just a tip for newer players. One of the things, if you're looking for a kill, one of the things that Varanus did in that case that was very good is before you start going after somebody else, buy at least 1 or 2 shares of your own stock. Because as you purchase your own stock and then you start purchasing into someone else, your stock is going to increase and you can actually make a tiny bit of money and sell out your last 2 shares to finish the buy. So just an upper level strategy that works really well.
Yeah, you gain a very small amount of money doing that. It's not nothing, but it's only usually a few thousand. But still, it's a helpful thing to do. There's no cost to doing it, as it were. So usually it's the right thing to do. Bilbo, we didn't talk too much about Bilbo. He was actually getting somewhere with his build. He had all of that carbon coming in and a lot of water coming in as well, and he had a reasonably well laid out base, but as I said, just that early upgrade killed him and wasn't quite able to get himself defended after that upgrade.
The one thing that I would say killed Bilbo was all of the shipping cost, and it was essentially putting, if you look at how many tiles are away from the base, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tiles away from the base, and all of those are being shipped, especially that triangle of water you can see is consuming a whole bunch of fuel.
Yep, it is. I mean, fuel isn't very expensive and hasn't been very expensive for the whole game. It was right at the beginning, but it was crashed pretty comprehensively by Varanus.
Let's take a look at Racket really quickly. So Racket, unfortunately, the one claim in the canyon is a little bit unfortunate because you can't really fit a lot of buildings around there. Instead of founding in the canyon right there, I think it would have been perfectly acceptable to found right next to that water so that you're not necessarily shipping. I did like the found of nomadic in this particular map. The reason being the electronics started low, and so you could really cruise to a commanding lead like Varanus did via that. Via founding nomadic, and you can get some off-worlds up, you can get a huge advantage, or you can get an early buy like what Varanus did. So.
Yep, Varanus is putting that off-world up right next to his base. It is, of course, protected by that $6,000 thinking machines that he picked up from the auction, so not too many worries for Varanus in this game just yet. Has it gooned as well, as you would expect. Goon's very, very cheap. You can see at the bottom the relative lack of black market purchases in this game, and that is something that I think a lot of our newer players can maybe look at as an easy way for them to improve. The black market is nearly always worth it, pretty much whatever you do, even if all you do is blow up a greenhouse farm like that. That's probably still a net positive for Varanus, even though that wasn't a particularly strong use of the black market.
And taking a look at Varanus's targeting, Varanus is targeting Never Zero. Part of the reason is they're in D+3 debt. Whenever you're about to target somebody, one of the things you can take a look at is, number one, how well is their base set up? Are there a lot of claims right next to their base? That's going to show you, is it going to be a really profitable subsidiary? Because as soon as you buy someone, you get a percentage of their income. And in this case, Never Zero is a cheaper option because of the depressed stock price, because of being in all that debt. And Never Zero also has a bunch of claims that the AI can rotate around very well to take advantage of whatever the most profitable market is. So that was definitely a good buy right there.
Absolutely, Never Zero going down to Varanasi. It was the debt that killed him most of all, about $200,000 worth of debt in that D- or D+3 as Racket's Geotherm again gets blown up again. Power not particularly strong at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be particularly strong for the rest of the game. Varanasi has a large surplus, but it doesn't really matter at this point. The income that Varanasi has with that off-world market is very high indeed. He's got his selection of patents. You can see them on the left-hand side there. There's a lot of them that he has, and he's just waiting now to get enough money to buy Racket out, which will be about another 150,000. He's got those water launches going. They are pretty good, about 30,000 per launch. So Varanasi doesn't have to wait too long to wrap this one up. He's been ahead for pretty much the whole game.
So one thing that I would like to mention, maybe Varanasi was not necessarily paying attention, but giving Racket, and obviously it won't matter to the output of the game, but giving Racket teleportation for $9,000, that's way too low, especially if you look at Varanasi is burning 1.7 fuel, mostly because of the chemical refineries and a little bit because of freighters, but that's money that you could have in your pocket, and the power price is, you know, relatively low. You're not making that much on power.
And now fuel is expensive.
I would have liked to see that contested a little bit more, but you know, like I said, that won't necessarily be the game breaker here.
Yep, and now fuel, of course, is expensive. $186 for fuel, so that is a lot of money that he is essentially burning and not really able to replace.
Another thing I'd like to point out is, especially as Nomad, I'm not sure that everybody necessarily thinks of it, but there are certain things that that Varanasi could do with some of the tiles that would make everything even better. As a Nomad, you have a geothermal unit, but remember, you have superconductor and geothermal borehole too, so you could actually delete the geothermal plant, which would give you a lot of silicon back because you have nanotechnology and it's silicon's at 184, and then move that, refund that claim to put it next to your base. You could still make power with that. You could make something else that's profitable, like fuel, and those are some of the things that you can do just to get that extra edge. Now, in this game, it doesn't necessarily matter, but those are the kind of things you need to look at, you know, as you advance a little bit more.
Yep, absolutely. Varanasi does wrap up this game quite comfortably. We saw a little bit of the balance sheet there